Okay, for unknown reasons to me, many people have asked me to make a video about all the best 35mm lenses, so I thought also why not toss in the Fuji here. So we have all of the Nikon mount and Fuji mount lenses that are best. Now, there are a couple lenses, three lenses that aren't shown here. The reason for that is that they're not so hot. First would be the 35mm f1.4 for the Fuji, which is the original 35mm lens for the Fuji X-Trans sensor. This is the latest one, and it's also very cheap. It's $400, a 35mm f2 Fuji. Incredibly sharp, very, very fast. Certainly beats out the 35mm f1.4 that came prior to it. Now, the other two lenses that are not included here are not included for a good reason. They're just not good. Yes, have used them, have even owned them. The first one would be the one that's slightly faster than this. It is the 35mm f1.8. Not this lens, which is the DX lens, 35mm f1.8, but the actual 35mm FX f1.8. Not a very good lens, rather expensive, not that good, has too much glass. Not good color saturation, not good rendering. This lens actually is the top value among all of these, unless you can find this little sucker, which is really rare. I'll get to in a second. This is a 35mm f2 D-series autofocus Nikon. It is still made. It's a D-series, an old screw drive lens. The rendition, color saturation, micro contrast on this lens is absolutely exquisite. You can often find them used out of Japan for like $160 and upwards. Absolutely exquisite, very small, incredible, wonderful lens. A must-have lens. Now before I get to the Zeiss Distagon 35mm f1.4, rather expensive beast, let's mention the other Nikon lens that is not present here. That is the 35mm f1.4 Nikon. That lens is $1,700. It's horrible. It's really sharp, and it's actually quite a nice lens, but it has issues, washed out, micro contrast, color saturation issues, just not that good. Now, the one thing that it does have that the Zeiss Distagon doesn't have here is it has a good lack of chromatic aberration, longitudinal chromatic aberration, which the Zeiss does have. This is a low element count prime lens from Nikon. Excuse me, from Zeiss, but it is expensive. You're looking at new, I think the current price is $1,000. I think it's $1,500. I think it just had a price increase in January on this Distagon 35mm. This is the ZF2 CPU contacts. Means it can be used on any Nikon D3000, 5000 series, any current Nikon camera. And obviously it is manually focused and very, very heavy, very, very expensive. But you have, like in high contrast situations, like a white flower against green grass or something, you'll have purple fringing. You'll have that chromatic aberration, but that's actually the lens or rendering correct depth, as I mentioned in a prior video, but it's not something that people want to see in their photos. But removing that in Photoshop or Lightroom is not an issue at all, but you obviously want it there to begin with to have a faster workflow when you're actually editing your photos. So that's the 35mm f1.4 Distagon from Carl Zeiss. Very expensive lens. The best lens I actually have, period, flat out, among all lenses that I've ever used over the decades is this. This is the 35mm f2 Distagon. No longer made by Zeiss. In their wonderful lack of forethought, they thought they would replace this with the Milvis, but it is irreplaceable. It still can be had, plenty of them in Japan for about $600 and $700. This is an f2 35mm. This is the best lens that I've ever owned, and I used to even own a Leica, so yes, I don't even remember any of my four Leica lenses or the many that I borrowed when I worked in the camera store being better than the Distagon. I've stated this is the best lens that I own, flat out, bar none, and it certainly is. You may contest that, whatever the case. I'm stating this as I was instructed to state it, since people wanted this 35mm ultimatum video. This lens is slightly rare, but incredibly cheap. It's an E-series Nikon 35mm f2.5. It's kind of an oddball. If you ever find one, you'll find one really, really cheap. This is actually an incredibly good lens. Usually you can find it for 50, 60 bucks. I said it's an f2.5 E-series 35mm Nikon. Very simple, very lightweight. If you can find one on eBay really cheap, I'd recommend buying one. Last lens, very cheap. They're all over the place. Yes, it is made in China. extremely lightweight. It's a 35mm DX lens, 35mm f1.8 G series Nikon. These are DX cameras used in DX crop sensor, D7100, D5000 series, D3000 series, autofocus, G series. No, it does not have an aperture ring, it's a G series, and no, it does not have vibration control. But it's incredibly sharp, and typically you can find one used for, I don't know, 130, typically 120, $130. It's actually an incredible lens for your DX crop sensor camera. So that is going down the list of all the Nikon lens mount lenses, Nikon mount f-mount lenses for Nikon from Zeiss and from Nikon. Like I said, I only left out 3 lenses here. The 35mm f1.4 for Fuji, which is old. The Fuji's older 35mm. This has superseded it. It's better and it's even cheaper, which usually doesn't happen with lenses. But that's also because it's an f2 instead of an f1.4. But it's also sharper, and it also is much faster in autofocus too. Looks like a nice rangefinder lens, doesn't it? That's what some people actually don't like about it, that it has that rangefinder profile. Best value for the money here, 35mm f2 D-series autofocus Nikon, typically $160, $170, $180 depending on condition. From Japan, this is an f2 lens, still current production lens. The reason this is still a current production lens is because it is absolutely incredible. The very, very expensive 35mm f1.4. The reason I own this instead of the 35mm f1.4 Nikon is because it is a superior lens. Flat out, bar none. It'll last a whole lot longer. That other lens for $1,700 is plastic with a motor. Yeah, it's got autofocus, but this one will last basically forever. This does have an issue at f1.8 and below of chromatic aberration. That's something you have to worry about. Not worry about, really. It's something you have to consider in high contrast shooting situations, and it's something you have to consider in workflow as far as removing it in post-production. The best lens that I have, once again, 35mm f2. Not made anymore. You can still find plenty of them. That's a Distagon 35mm f2, ZF2. And the 2 series means it has CPU contacts in the rear of the lens, same as this Carl Zeiss 35mm f1.4, which means you can use it on any current production. Here's the CPU contacts, any current production Nikon. It's going to be manual focus regardless, but it is CPU chipped for communicating to the camera what lens is sitting on the front of it. So that's the rundown. I call that the 35mm lens ultimatum, and those would be the lenses recommended for Nikon or for Fuji. And once again, make an intelligent, wise, informed choice, and spend your money wisely. Get what you need, not necessarily what you want. It's because it's huge, gigantic glass like this, like, oh my god, that's so huge, I want that. Yeah, but the lens has chromatic aberration issues at f1.8 and f1.4. I mean, this is undeniable, so ultimately you're paying a whole lot of damn money for a faster lens here that does have some constrictions in high contrast shooting situations. So anyway, take all that into consideration, make a wise, informed, intelligent choice. Thanks for watching. Catch you later. Bye.